I'm Riley, 42 female. I live in a quiet suburban town in a small house that has felt both too empty and just right since my divorce. I'm a librarian, which means my life is built around order, facts, and the quiet dignity of stories. For the past 2 years, I thought the story of my marriage had found a peaceful ending, but I was wrong. It was just the prologue to a war I never saw coming, one where my own son would be turned into the primary weapon against me. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The peace that followed my divorce from Ethan was, in hindsight, suspiciously perfect. We had been married for 18 years, a union that had slowly eroded under the weight of his ambition and my refusal to be a passive accessory to it. Ethan was a financial advisor, a man who saw life as a series of transactions and assets to be managed. I was an asset. Our son, Josh, was a future investment. Our home was a portfolio piece. When I finally decided I couldn't live as a line item on a balance sheet anymore, the divorce was surprisingly amicable. Ethan, ever the pragmatist, seemed to agree that our partnership was no longer yielding a positive return. He didn't fight me on the house, a modest 2-story colonial I'd lovingly cared for, and he agreed to a joint custody arrangement for Josh, who was 14 at the time. "It's best for the boy, Riley," he'd said, his voice smooth and reasonable. Stability is key during these formative years. For 2 years, that stability held. Josh split his weeks between my quiet, book-filled home and Ethan's sleek, minimalist condo downtown. Our interactions were models of civility, confined to polite texts about scheduling and brief, neutral exchanges during pickups and drop-offs. I believed we were successfully co-parenting. I believed we were putting Josh first. I saw Ethan's easy compliance as a sign of maturity, a shared desire to shield our son from the fallout of our failed marriage. What a fool I was. I mistook a calculated ceasefire for peace. Ethan wasn't being mature. He was biding his time, waiting for the most opportune moment to renegotiate the terms of our separation to his sole advantage. The first crack in this fragile peace appeared subtly. It started with Josh. At 16, he was deep in the throes of adolescence, a confusing mix of sullen silence and impassioned opinions. But his demeanor began to change in ways that felt less like typical teenage angst and more like a deliberate distancing. He started forgetting things at his dad's place: his favorite hoodie, his textbooks, his laptop charger. These memory lapses always necessitated a trip back to Ethan's, often eating into my time with him. When he was with me, he was distracted, his eyes constantly on his phone, a small, secretive smile playing on his lips as he texted. When I'd ask who he was talking to, he'd just shrug and say, "Friends." Then came the comments, small barbs coated in teenage indifference. "Dad's getting a new sports car," he'd mention while I was driving him to school in my sensible sedan. "He said it's an investment in enjoying life." Another time, as I was preparing a simple pasta dinner, he remarked, "Dad and I went to that new steakhouse last night. He said it's important to appreciate the finer things." Each comment was a carefully crafted comparison, designed to paint my life as small and lacking, while Ethan's was expansive and exciting. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just a boy being impressed by his father's material success. I didn't want to see it as a coordinated campaign. My best friend, Maya, a therapist with an unnervingly accurate read on people, was more skeptical. We were having our weekly coffee when I mentioned Josh's recent behavior. "It's not just about the money, Riley," she said, stirring her latte. "It's about influence. Ethan is curating an image. The question is, why now?" I didn't have an answer. In my mind, the custody arrangement was settled. We both had our time with Josh. What was there to gain? The answer arrived in a sterile manila envelope delivered by a certified courier. It was a petition to modify the custody agreement. Ethan was suing for sole physical custody of Josh. The papers were filled with legal jargon, but the message was brutally clear. He claimed I was unable to provide a stable and enriching environment. He cited my modest income and limited social engagement as detrimental to Josh's development. The document was a masterpiece of fiction, twisting my quiet, stable life into a narrative of neglect and mediocrity. My home, once a sanctuary, was reframed as a place of stagnation. My profession as a librarian was presented not as a passion for knowledge, but as a low-ambition career that couldn't possibly inspire a bright young man like Josh. I remember my hands shaking as I read the words. It felt like a punch to the gut, a betrayal of the peace I had so carefully nurtured. I immediately called Ethan. He answered on the second ring, his voice as calm and collected as ever. "Ethan, what is this? What on earth are you doing?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and panic. "I'm doing what's best for our son, Riley," he said, the manufactured sincerity in his tone making my stomach churn. "He's getting older. He needs a strong, successful male role model to guide him. He needs to be in an environment that reflects the kind of future he can have." "And my home isn't that?" I asked, incredulous. "You think a steakhouse and a sports car are better than a mother who loves him?" "It's not about love, Riley, it's about opportunity," he replied coolly. "Josh agrees. He wants to live with me full-time." That was the line that broke me. Josh agrees. The thought was a shard of ice in my heart. Had my son, my quiet, thoughtful boy, truly turned against me, or was this just another one of Ethan's manipulations? I didn't know, but as I hung up the phone, the illusion of our civil end shattered completely, leaving behind the cold, hard reality of the battle to come. The peace had been a lie, and I had walked willingly into the ambush he had been planning all along. My heart ached with a profound sense of dread, not just for the legal fight ahead, but for the relationship with my son that I now feared was already lost. I had to fight, but I had no idea the depths of deceit I was about to face. The weeks leading up to the custody hearing were a blur of anxiety and frantic preparation. I hired a lawyer, a competent but overworked man named Mr. Davies, who assured me that Ethan's claims were flimsy. "Judges value consistency, Ms. Evans," he'd said, patting a stack of files. "You've been a model co-parent for 2 years. A sudden change like this requires substantial proof of a changed circumstance, not just a bigger bank account." His confidence was a small comfort, but it did little to soothe the gnawing fear in my gut. My biggest worry wasn't the legal arguments, it was Josh. He had become distant, almost cold. He spent his court-mandated weeks with me in near silence, offering one-word answers and avoiding my gaze. When I tried to talk to him about the hearing, he would shut down completely. "Dad's handling it," he'd mutter before retreating to his room and closing the door. Ethan had successfully built a wall between us, and I didn't know how to break through. The day of the hearing, the courtroom felt sterile and suffocating. The air was thick with unspoken tensions. Ethan was on the other side of the room, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, looking every bit the successful, confident father he claimed to be. He occasionally glanced my way, his expression not of anger, but of something far more unnerving, pity. As if this whole unpleasant business was my fault for not gracefully accepting my new, diminished role. My lawyer presented my case first, highlighting my stable job, my deep involvement in Josh's schooling, and the consistency of my care since the divorce. It was all true, all documented, and all dreadfully boring. It was the story of a quiet, dependable life. Then it was Ethan's lawyer's turn. She was sharp and aggressive, painting a picture of me as a loving but ultimately uninspiring parent. She argued that as Josh entered his crucial final years of high school, he needed to be immersed in an environment of success and ambition, an environment Ethan could provide. "It's not about deprecating Ms. Evans's lifestyle," she said with a practiced air of sympathy. "It's about elevating Josh's." It was all rhetoric, but it was effective. It made my stable world seem small and confining. The true blow, however, came when they called their final witness. The petitioner calls Joshua Evans to the stand. My heart stopped. I looked at Mr. Davies in a panic. He gave a slight shake of his head. He hadn't expected this. It was a bold, risky move to put a child on the stand in a custody case, and it spoke to how confident Ethan was. Josh walked slowly to the witness stand, refusing to look at me. He looked so young and yet so old in that moment, his shoulders slumped under the weight of a suit that was slightly too big for him. He was sworn in, his voice barely a whisper. Ethan's lawyer began her questioning gently, her voice soft and coaxing. "Josh, can you tell the court a little bit about your relationship with your mother?" He mumbled. "It's okay." "Just okay?" she prodded. "Do you feel she supports your ambitions, your dreams for the future?" Josh hesitated, his eyes flicking for a split second toward Ethan, who gave him a barely perceptible nod. She doesn't really get it," Josh said, his voice a little stronger now. "She wants me to be safe. She likes things quiet." The lawyer smiled sympathetically. "And your father, How does he support you?" "He's always talking about the future," Josh said, his words sounding rehearsed. "About college, about my career. He takes me to networking events. He says it's about building a brand. He wants me to go to an Ivy League school, maybe study finance like him." My own lawyer's cross-examination was gentle, but Josh was a fortress. Mr. Davies tried to get him to talk about the good times we'd had, the trips to the library, the movie nights, the years I'd spent helping him with his homework. Josh's answers were clipped and noncommittal. "Yeah, that was nice," was all he would offer. Then came the final, brutal question from Ethan's lawyer. "Josh, the court needs to know your preference. If you could choose, who would you want to live with full-time?" The silence in the courtroom was absolute. I held my breath, a desperate, silent prayer on my lips. "Please, Josh, remember us, remember me." Josh took a deep breath, and for the first time he looked directly at me. His eyes were filled with an emotion I couldn't decipher. Was it guilt? Defiance? Fear? And then he turned to the judge. "I want to live with my dad," he said, the words clear and steady. "I think it would be better for my future." The rest of the hearing passed in a haze. I barely registered the closing arguments. The judge's final words echoed in the cavernous room, granting Ethan's petition based on the stated preference of the minor, who is of sufficient age and maturity to make such a choice. Sole physical custody was awarded to Ethan. I was granted visitation every other weekend. Just like that, it was over. My role as a mother had been reduced to a weekend activity. As the court adjourned, Ethan walked over to me, that look of pity back on his face. "I'm sorry it had to be this way, Riley," he said softly. "It's for the best." I couldn't speak. I could only stare at him, the architect of my heartbreak, and then at my son who was already walking away with his father, never once looking back. The ambush was complete. I had lost. The pain was a physical thing, a crushing weight in my chest that made it hard to breathe. I had not only lost custody of my son, but I felt I had lost my son himself. The first weekend without Josh was the longest of my life. The house was oppressively silent. Every corner held a memory, the scuff marks on the wall in the hallway from his hockey stick, the worn-out spot on the couch where we used to watch movies, the faint smell of his shampoo still lingering in the bathroom. I moved through the empty rooms like a ghost, the judge's words and Josh's testimony playing on a relentless loop in my mind. I want to live with my dad. It would be better for my future. The betrayal felt absolute, a clean, deep cut that severed something vital inside me. I spent most of Saturday in bed, cycling through grief, anger, and a profound, hollow numbness. My friend Maya called several times, but I ignored her calls, not ready to put my pain into words. On Sunday evening, I finally forced myself to get up and do something, anything, to feel productive. I decided to sort through a pile of old mail and papers that had accumulated on the kitchen counter. Bills, junk mail, old magazines. At the bottom of the pile was an old cell phone bill from a few months prior, back when Josh was still on my family plan. I had switched him to a new plan under Ethan's name as part of the new custody arrangement, a small, painful administrative task that felt like signing another surrender. I was about to toss the old bill into the recycling bin when I stopped. It was from the period when Josh's behavior had first started to change. On a whim, driven by a desperate need for answers, I logged into my account online to look at the detailed statement. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Evidence of something? Anything. I scanned the call logs, seeing mostly numbers I recognized, his friends, my number, the pizza place down the street. But then I saw a pattern. There were dozens of calls almost daily to a number I didn't recognize. They were often late at night, sometimes lasting for over an hour. Curiosity gnawed at me. I typed the number into a search engine and my stomach dropped. The number belonged to a Dr. Alastair Finch, a youth and family performance coach. His website was slick and corporate, filled with testimonials from parents praising him for helping their teens unlock their full potential and achieve elite academic and social placement. His services included communication strategy and personal branding for college applications. It sounded less like coaching and more like public relations for teenagers. Why was Josh talking to this man? Ethan must have hired him. It was another piece of his enriching environment puzzle. But it was what I found next that turned my grief into cold, hard fury. Attached to my online account was a feature I'd forgotten about, a visual voicemail service that archived messages. Even if they had been deleted from the phone itself, there were a few old messages from his friends, and then I saw it, a voicemail from 3 weeks before the hearing. The caller ID was Ethan's number. My finger trembled as I clicked the play icon. Ethan's voice filled the quiet kitchen, but he wasn't talking to me. It was a message he had accidentally left on Josh's phone, a pocket dial. He was clearly in the middle of a conversation with someone else. "Oh, the kid is completely on board now," Ethan was saying, his voice confident and dismissive. "It took a few weeks with Finch, but he's got the script down pat. Better for my future. Environment of success, all the keywords the judge will eat up. Finch is worth every penny. He taught Josh exactly how to play the part of the ambitious son held back by his sentimental mother." There was a pause, and I could hear the faint murmur of another voice. Then Ethan laughed. "Worried he'll crack? Not a chance. I've got his dream car hanging over his head. A brand new Mustang for his 17th birthday, the day after we win. And I made it clear the deal is off if he messes up on the stand. He knows what's at stake. He'll perform." The recording ended. I sat there, frozen, the phone still clutched in my hand. The air in my lungs turned to ice. He's got the script down pat. He taught Josh exactly how to play the part. He'll perform. It wasn't just manipulation. It was a calculated, coached performance. My son hadn't betrayed me out of a genuine desire to live with his father. He had been bribed and coerced. Ethan had hired a professional to teach our son how to lie, how to methodically dismantle my character and our relationship in a court of law. The cool, distant boy in the courtroom wasn't my son. He was an actor playing a role his father had paid for. The heartbreak I'd been feeling for weeks was suddenly eclipsed by a tidal wave of incandescent rage. The pain was still there, a raw, open wound, but now it had a target. Ethan hadn't just taken my son, he had corrupted him. He had used Josh's love and trust, his teenage desires for a car and a glamorous life, as leverage to hurt me. I saved the voicemail, downloading a copy to my computer and emailing it to myself. My hands were steady now, my mind eerily calm. The grief had burned away, leaving something steely and resolute in its place. Mr. Davies had said that to overturn a judge's decision, we would need substantial new evidence. Evidence of fraud, of parental alienation, of witness tampering. In my hand, I held the proof. This wasn't just about getting Josh back anymore. This was about justice. Ethan thought he had won, that he had successfully executed the perfect, quiet takedown. He saw me as the sentimental, unambitious librarian, too passive to fight back. He had underestimated me. He had forgotten that librarians are not just keepers of stories. We are experts in research. We know how to find information, how to follow a trail, and how to uncover the truth, no matter how deeply it's buried. And I would uncover every last one of his lies. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. The voicemail was the key, but I knew it might not be enough on its own. Ethan's lawyers could argue it was taken out of context, that it was just a father expressing confidence in his son. To truly expose Ethan, I needed to dismantle the entire facade he had so carefully constructed, the image of the wealthy, successful father who could offer Josh a world I couldn't. I needed to prove that his environment of success was a house of cards. My librarian instincts kicked in. I approached it like a complex research project, with Ethan's life as my subject. My first call was not to my lawyer, but to Maya. I met her at her office, played the voicemail, and watched as her expression shifted from sympathetic concern to professional fury. "This is textbook narcissistic manipulation, Riley," she said, her voice tight. "And it's also illegal. This is witness coaching, possibly tampering. But you're right, we need more. We need to show a pattern of deceit. Ethan had always been meticulous about his public image, but he was also arrogant. Arrogance leads to sloppiness. He believed he was smarter than everyone else, especially me. My starting point was his finances. During our divorce, he had presented a picture of steady, impressive wealth. His financial disclosures showed a thriving advisory business, substantial investments, and a healthy income. It was this financial strength that had formed the backbone of his custody argument. But I remembered something from our marriage. Ethan often talked about creative accounting and how the truly wealthy leverage debt, not assets. He saw financial rules as things to be bent, not followed. I started with the public records, things anyone could find if they knew where to look. Property records, business filings, court records. I spent my evenings after work at the library, using the professional databases I had access to. The first thread I pulled was his condo. He had presented it as a prime asset, but a quick search of property records showed it was leveraged to the hilt, with a second mortgage taken out just 6 months ago. A big one. Why would he need that much liquid cash so suddenly? Next, I looked up his business, Ethan Evans Wealth Management. The state business registry showed it was in good standing, but a deeper dive into business credit reports told a different story. His company had several outstanding liens from unpaid vendors. They weren't huge amounts, but they painted a picture of someone struggling with cash flow. The real breakthrough came from a place I hadn't expected. During our marriage, Ethan had a passion for investing in small, high-risk startups. He considered himself a venture capitalist in the making. I remembered the name of one company he had been particularly excited about, a tech firm called Innovate Dynamics. Our divorce decree listed his shares in it as a significant asset. Out of curiosity, I looked them up. The company had gone bankrupt 4 months ago, completely worthless. The news had been reported in a few obscure tech industry journals, but not in the mainstream financial press. It was highly likely he hadn't disclosed this loss. His net worth had taken a massive hit, one he had carefully concealed. This discovery led me to a new line of inquiry. Where was his money actually going? If his business was struggling and his investments had tanked, how was he affording the new sports car for Josh, the expensive steak dinners, the performance coach? It didn't add up. I started thinking about his habits. Ethan loved to brag. He used social media as a tool for his personal brand, constantly posting about his successful life. I made a new anonymous social media profile and started following him and his circle. His posts were a curated gallery of success, photos of him at charity galas, at exclusive golf clubs, on weekend trips. It was on the page of one of his golf buddies that I found the next piece of the puzzle. It was a picture of a group of men, including Ethan, celebrating on a boat. The caption read, "Celebrating Mark's big win with the team, onward and upward." The post was tagged with the name of a different wealth management firm, Prestige Capital Group. A quick search revealed Prestige was a major competitor of Ethan's small firm. Why was he celebrating with them? I dug deeper, searching for connections between Ethan and Prestige. It took hours of cross-referencing names and searching business news archives, but then I found it. A small press release announcing that Prestige had acquired a smaller firm, Sterling Financial, 3 months ago. The founder of Sterling Financial was a man named Mark, the same man from the boat picture. Ethan was celebrating with a competitor who had just made a fortune. But what was his connection? The answer lay in our old tax returns. I still had copies from the last year we filed jointly. I remembered Ethan setting up a number of shell LLCs for his various investments. One of them, EV Holdings LLC, had been used to channel funds into that bankrupt startup, Innovate Dynamics. I searched for EV Holdings in the state business records. To my shock, I found that just last month, its ownership had been transferred. The new owner was Mark, the founder of Sterling Financial. My heart pounded as the pieces clicked into place. Ethan hadn't just lost money on Innovate Dynamics, he was in deep debt to the other investors. He had sold his shell company, and the debt attached to it to this Mark person. But what did Mark get in return? Why would he take on that debt? I scrolled back through Ethan's social media, looking at his connections, his photos, his comments. He was constantly praising Prestige Capital Group liking their posts, and tagging their senior partners. He wasn't competing with them, he was trying to join them. My theory formed, cold and clear in my mind. Ethan was broke or close to it. His business was failing. His big investment had vaporized. He was desperately trying to get a job at Prestige, a much larger and more stable firm. His entire lifestyle, the car, the dinners, the flashy condo, was a performance, not just for Josh and the court, but for his prospective new employers. He was selling them an image of success, and winning sole custody of his son was the ultimate prop. It made him look like a stable, dedicated family man, the kind of person you could trust with millions of dollars. He wasn't just lying to me, he was running a massive, life-altering scam on everyone, and I now had the breadcrumbs to prove it. Armed with a folder thick with evidence of Ethan's financial deception and the explosive voicemail, I met with my lawyer, Mr. Davies. As I laid out the property records, the business liens, the bankruptcy report for Innovate Dynamics, and my theory about Prestige Capital Group, his expression changed from weary diligence to sharp focus. When I finally played the voicemail, he leaned back in his chair and let out a low whistle. "Well, Ms. Evans," he said, a new respect in his voice. "This changes everything. This isn't just grounds for an appeal, it's evidence of perjury and fraud upon the court." He explained the legal strategy. We would file a motion to set aside the previous judgment based on new evidence. But he warned me that a direct legal confrontation could be messy and prolonged. It would drag Josh through another traumatic court battle, forcing him to testify again. "There might be a more effective way," Mr. Davies mused, tapping his pen. "Ethan's entire life is built on a public image. Perhaps the most effective venue for this confrontation isn't a courtroom, but a public stage." His words sparked an idea, a plan that was audacious and terrifying, but also felt profoundly right. It was a performance, just like Ethan's, but mine would be rooted in the truth. The stage for my performance would be Ethan's own 60th birthday party for his father, a man I had always respected. Ethan was throwing a lavish catered affair at his condo's exclusive rooftop lounge in 2 weeks. He had invited all his business associates, prospective colleagues from Prestige Capital, and, of course, our family. In a move of supreme arrogance, he had even sent me an invitation, a gesture meant to showcase his magnanimity in victory. "It's important for Josh to see us being civil," his accompanying text read. I RSVP'd yes immediately. My preparation was meticulous. First, I needed to get through to Josh, not to turn him against his father, but to offer him a way out of the lie. Bribing him with a car was one thing, but the guilt of lying in court had to be weighing on him. I waited until I knew he'd be home alone one afternoon and went to Ethan's condo. When Josh answered the door, he looked shocked to see me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I just need to talk to you for 5 minutes, Josh." "Please," I said, my voice calm and even. I didn't want to scare him. He reluctantly let me in. We stood awkwardly in the stark, impersonal foyer. I didn't accuse him. I didn't yell. I simply looked him in the eyes and said, "I know about the arrangement with your father. I know he coached you, and I know he promised you a car." The color drained from his face. His carefully constructed teenage swagger crumbled, revealing the scared boy underneath. His eyes filled with tears. "Mom, he stammered. "I'm so sorry, I didn't." He made it sound so simple. He said it was what was best for me, that you'd be fine, and he put you in an impossible position, I finished for him, my heart aching. "And I'm not angry at you, Josh. I'm angry at him for using you, but now you have a choice. You can continue with this lie, or you can help me make it right." I told him I wasn't going to drag him back to court. I told him my plan. I needed him to do one thing, get me his father's laptop. "He leaves it on his desk, unlocked, all the time," Josh whispered, his voice shaking. "He's so arrogant, he doesn't think anyone would dare." The next day, during my scheduled visitation, Josh brought me the laptop. It took me less than an hour to find what I needed. Ethan, in his supreme overconfidence, had saved the scripts. In a folder labeled J College Prep, I found documents. One was a Q&A sheet titled Courtroom Testimony Points, with Josh's coached answers typed out. Another was a detailed financial plan for his application to Prestige Capital, which conveniently omitted all his debts and the bankrupt investment. And the crown jewel, the bill of sale for the Mustang, dated the day after the custody hearing. I made copies of everything and returned the laptop. Next, I prepared the main event. I compiled all my evidence into a seamless presentation: the voicemail audio, the faked financial documents, the real bankruptcy filings, screenshots of the testimony scripts from Ethan's laptop, and the receipt for the car. I embedded it all into a slideshow designed to look like a heartwarming family tribute. The presentation was set to be the centerpiece of the party, a surprise I had arranged with the event coordinator under the guise of honoring my former father-in-law. My final preparation was myself. I bought a new dress, a simple but elegant dark blue sheath that projected quiet confidence. I had my hair done. When I looked in the mirror, I saw not a victim, but a woman ready for battle. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my story, and my son's conscience. It was a performance to end all performances. The night of the party, the rooftop lounge was buzzing. Floor to ceiling, windows offered a glittering view of the city skyline. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Ethan was in his element, gliding through the crowd, shaking hands, clapping men on the back. His arm possessively around Josh's shoulders. He was showcasing his prize son. When he saw me, he flashed a brilliant, patronizing smile. "Riley, so glad you could make it. See, we can all be adults about this," he said, loud enough for his colleagues to hear. I smiled back, a calm, serene expression I had practiced in the mirror. "Of course, Ethan, I wouldn't miss celebrating your father for the world." I spent the first hour mingling, exchanging pleasantries with family members and former friends. I saw the partners from Prestige Capital holding court in a corner, and I saw Ethan making sure to laugh at all their jokes. I found my former father-in-law, Arthur, a genuinely good man who had always been kind to me. "It's good to see you, Riley," he said, his eyes filled with a sad warmth. "I know this has all been difficult." "It has, Arthur," I replied. "But I believe things have a way of working out." The time came for the toasts. Ethan took the microphone first, delivering a smooth, eloquent speech about his father's integrity and legacy, a masterclass in hypocrisy. Then he announced, "And now Riley has put together a little surprise for Dad. A trip down memory lane." He gestured for me to come forward, a smug look on his face. This was his final act of dominance, letting his defeated ex-wife pay tribute to his family, proving to everyone what a gracious winner he was. I took the microphone, my heart hammering against my ribs, but my hands were steady. A large projection screen hummed to life behind me. "Thank you, Ethan," I began, my voice clear and carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "I do want to honor Arthur, a man of true integrity. And in the spirit of the values he represents, honesty, character, and truth, I wanted to share a story about the legacy we build for our children." The first slide appeared. It was a beautiful photo of a much younger Josh, maybe 7 years old, sitting on my lap as we read a book together in the library. A collective awe rippled through the crowd. "We teach our children that the truth matters," I continued, as the next slide showed a photo of Josh on his first day of high school, beaming. "We teach them that you can't build a future on a foundation of lies." Then the tone shifted. The next slide was a stark black screen with white text. The courtroom testimony points. A photo of the document from Ethan's laptop. I saw Ethan's smile falter. His eyes widened in confusion and dawning horror. "But sometimes," I said, my voice hardening slightly, "people lose their way. They get so focused on winning, they forget what's right. They teach their children not to tell the truth, but to perform it." I clicked the remote. The audio of the voicemail began to play, Ethan's confident, dismissive voice filling the silent room. "No, the kid is completely on board now. He's got the script down pat. Finch is worth every penny. I've got his dream car hanging over his head." Gasps erupted around the room. I saw the Prestige Capital partners exchange shocked glances. Ethan was frozen, his face a mask of disbelief. I didn't stop. The next slide showed the bill of sale for the Mustang, dated the day after the hearing. "This is the price of a son's testimony," I said calmly. The slideshow continued, a relentless cascade of evidence. The lies from his financial disclosure next to the real bankruptcy report. the list of his company's liens. My voice was the only sound, a steady, factual narration of his deceit. "This is the environment of success that was presented to the court," I said, as a slide showed his maxed-out mortgages. A success built on debt and deception. A performance, not just for the court, but perhaps for prospective employers as well. I glanced pointedly at the partners from Prestige Capital. Their faces were grim. The final slide was that first photo again, me and a young Josh, happy and safe in the library. True wealth isn't about sports cars or steak dinners. It's about character. It's about truth. I lowered the microphone. "A toast," I said, raising my glass of water. "To the truth." The silence was deafening. No one moved. Ethan stood as if turned to stone, his face pale and blotchy. His father, Arthur, was staring at him with an expression of profound disappointment. All eyes were on Ethan, the man who had just been so publicly and thoroughly exposed. The party was over. His career prospects were in ruins, his reputation was destroyed. And in the corner, I saw Josh step away from his father, his shoulders no longer slumped, and walk slowly, deliberately, over to my side. He didn't say a word. He just stood with me. It was all the victory I needed. The aftermath of the party was swift and decisive. The rooftop lounge cleared out in record time, people murmuring excuses and avoiding Ethan's gaze. The partners from Prestige Capital left without a word to him, their stony expressions saying everything. I left with Josh, the two of us walking out into the cool night air in a silence that was not awkward but healing. In the car on the way home, he finally spoke. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I was so stupid. He made it all sound so exciting and I wanted it." I reached over and took his hand. "He's your dad, Josh. You wanted to believe him. The fault is his, not yours. We'll fix this. Together." The next day, my lawyer filed the motion to set aside the custody order, submitting the voicemail and all the supporting evidence of Ethan's fraud and witness tampering. Faced with indisputable proof and the threat of criminal charges, Ethan didn't even attempt to fight it. His lawyer contacted mine within hours and agreed to everything. The previous order was vacated, and our original 50-50 custody arrangement was reinstated by the court with a stern warning to Ethan from the judge. But it was a moot point. Josh refused to see him. He chose to live with me full-time, and Ethan, stripped of all his leverage and credibility, could do nothing about it. His professional life imploded just as spectacularly. The news of his public humiliation spread like wildfire through his professional circle. Prestige Capital, needless to say, did not hire him. Many of his existing clients, spooked by the revelations of his financial instability and moral bankruptcy, pulled their accounts. Within a few months, he had to sell his condo and his new sports car, Josh's Mustang, and move into a small, rented apartment. My life, in contrast, began to open up. With Josh home, the silence in my house was replaced by the familiar sounds of teenage life, music from his room, the clatter of a bowl in the kitchen, his laughter as he talked to friends online. Our relationship was fragile at first. There was a lot of hurt and guilt to work through. We started seeing a family therapist, the wonderful Maya, who helped us learn to communicate again. It wasn't about blame, it was about understanding. I came to understand the pressures and temptations Josh had faced, and he came to understand the profound pain his actions had caused. Slowly, painstakingly, we began to rebuild the trust that had been broken. We were building a bridge back to each other, brick by brick. There were other unexpected positive changes. Ben, the university professor who was a regular at my library, had heard about what happened through the town grapevine. He approached me one afternoon as I was reshelving books. "I heard what you did, Riley," he said, his expression a mixture of awe and admiration. That took incredible courage. His simple, sincere words meant the world to me. We started talking more, first about books and history, then about our lives. He was kind, intelligent, and funny, and he saw me for who I was. Not a victim, but a strong, capable woman. Our friendship slowly blossomed into something more, a quiet, steady relationship built on mutual respect and a shared love for the quiet corners of the world. It was a gentle, unexpected gift after so much turmoil. Months later, Josh decided he was ready to see his father. He told me he needed to do it for himself to close that chapter. I supported his decision. They met at a neutral coffee shop. Josh told me later that Ethan looked smaller, defeated. He apologized, a hollow string of words that Josh felt lacked any real remorse. He was sorry he got caught, not sorry for what he did. Josh accepted his apology, not for Ethan's sake, but for his own. It was the last time he saw him for a long, long time. He said he needed to build his own future now, one based on his own merits, not on his father's broken promises. The revenge I had sought wasn't about destroying Ethan. It was about protecting my son and reclaiming the truth. The true victory wasn't watching Ethan's life fall apart, but watching my son's life come back together. It was seeing Josh shed the weight of the lies and start to become the wonderful, honest young man I always knew he was. My life was no longer defined by Ethan's betrayal, but by the resilience of my family and the quiet, profound joy of a second chance. My home was full again, not just with my son, but with peace, honesty, and the promise of a new, authentic chapter.